Hi, everyone. I'm Linda Sheldonfeld from the International Grief Institute and creator of Grief Diaries. And welcome to Moments of Hope. This is a show featuring people who've turned pain into purpose to do wonderful things in the world. And tonight we are talking about dreams and how they can be used to help people heal. And our expert tonight is Carla Blowey. Hello, Carla.
Hi. Good evening, everyone.
You're coming to us live from Colorado. Is that right?
From Colorado. Yes.
Colorado, one of the prettiest places on planet Earth.
It is.
I'm so glad that you're here with us tonight. You have a remarkable story, and I'm excited to get to it. But real quick, I want to share with people who you are. You are a certified dream work facilitator, a trained minister, hospice volunteer, peer support facilitator, author, and presenter. And in 1991, when your son Kevin was 5 years old, you had an ominous dream that was pivotal in events that were about to unfold that would affect the rest of your life. Tell us about the dream.
Well, it was a dream unlike anything I'd ever had in my entire life. I was 33 years old, and I could remember my dreams from the time I was 3 years old. And this dream was a nightmare. It was prophetic and precognitive. It had the elements of both in it. And it shook my foundation. And yet when I woke up, I had to get to my day.
And so what was the dream?
So what happened was, in fact, would you mind if I read it?
No, not at all.
You know, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah.
Because I talk about it a lot, but sometimes I don't always get to read it. It was January 6, 1991. And so this was the morning of January 7th, 1991. So it's that, overnight thing. I'm walking down our street with my children, Amber, who's age 8, and Kevin, who is age 5. I'm very afraid because a cult group is trying to take them away from me. I have the children close to me so that I can protect them from the cult people who are walking alongside us in the street. They seem to know Kevin. Next, I'm in my house on my street, hiding in the shadows with the children. The cult group is in the house. They are all women, swaying side to side, moving us along in their circle. The room brightens and a blonde-haired woman emerges from the shadows. She is speaking to me, and we are not safe. I know they want my children. Amber and Kevin are to my right, and I have my arm across them. And suddenly I feel a black hand come across my chest to grab Amber. I slap it away, screaming that she cannot have her. I'm screaming obscenities, fighting for her hand to hand. The children and I run home, and in our house, I know that we are safe and that the doors are locked. Next, I'm in the kitchen, standing by the counter. The kitchen is bare, and I am the only one there. The children are playing elsewhere in the house when I hear Kevin calling to me to come find him. Mommy, come find me. I run to find him, and I realize that there are no floors, and I must climb these ladders and stairs to go up. He is calling for me to come find him, and I climb frantically in the direction of his voice. His voice becomes louder and more insistent. Mommy, come find me. Breathless, I climbed the last ladder, stretching to the top story, and I pulled myself over to the wood floor. I scrambled about in the shadows and regained my footing to find yet another obstacle in my way. Stepping toward the closed door, I gripped the knob and abruptly pushed it open. Horrified, I came face to face with the blonde woman from the cult. Locking her eyes with mine, she bore a hole through my soul with her cold stare. In disbelief, I stood frozen in the doorway, stunned that she had found the children in me. Emerging from the dark, her flaxen hair seemed to illuminate the space above her, revealing the wooden rafters in the attic. She stood erect in the shadows like a sentry on duty, with her right forearm raised about waist high. In her hand, she grasped a long silver blade that pointed upwards. Unyielding in her mission, she summoned its power to intercept my path. Stunned, I sensed Kevin dangling from the rafters below her feet. Her relentless stare pierced through my heart, confirming her message. She had come for my son. In defense, I covered my eyes to break the spell, while a desperate cry of denial came from deep within me. Peering through my trembling fingers, I exposed myself again, and with one more look, she commanded the door shut, leaving me trapped on the other side. Screaming like a mad woman, I beat my fist upon the heavy attic door that separated my son from me.
Wow. And so when you woke up from that, what went through your mind?
I woke up and I saw the light coming from the hallway of our bedroom door, and my husband was standing there. He was getting ready to go to work, and I was just so shaken. But what was happening was, I got to wake up. Oh my gosh, that's not real. It can't be real. There's my husband. It's a school day. Got to get up, get the kids going. Boom, 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 boom. Yep. And I popped up out of bed. And it wasn't until later in the morning, after I was home by myself again, it was my day off from work, and I started thinking about it. I thought, oh my God, I've really got to get square with that,
Yeah, that was a terrible dream. Yeah.
The rest of the day is going on. And so then Kevin was in preschool at the time. He was 5, but he was in a pre-kindergarten thing. And so it was my day to pick up the kids. It was my day to run carpool. And so I went to get them, and we came home. And the striking thing about my dream is that Kevin was having his own experience. So that before we went to school, when I got up to get the kids going and dressed and breakfast, he was sitting at the table, very, very somber, very pensive, and very unlike him, very uncharacteristic. And it was, Christmas vacation had just finished, and it was the first day of school. So, the kids were excited to be back and to go back to school, see their friends and all. He loved his friends, loved school. And that morning, he was having his own experience, and he sat at the table and wasn't eating. He just sort of had his head down, and, I was like, hey buddy, what's up? What's up? And, Mommy, I just don't want to go to school today. I don't want to go. And it was, it just struck me, and I knew that, knowing him, because he was so intuitive anyway, that, something was up, but, a mom's intuition didn't pay any more attention to it. It was like, okay, we got to get to school, all your friends are going to be there, Kyle's there, Michael's there, you're going to have a good time once you get there, and blah, blah, blah. And got up from the table, got dressed, his ride came, and he was in better spirits, So, when I look back on it and realizing that, there were so many other things that were already in place, the dream for me was it was not a warning for me to stop what was destined. So, I came to understand that Kevin was being called to fulfill his destiny, and I was being called to pursue mine.
And so you woke up from the dream, and what you didn't know then was that hours later,
Right.
it would come to fruition. What happened?
Right. Well, I picked him up from preschool. We spent the afternoon together. I was going to run errands, which he normally would have done with me. And then I just had that sense like, no, I don't want to do that. Let's just hang out here this afternoon until it's time to pick up Amber from school and take her on to gymnastics. We had lunch. He wanted to watch a movie. I was putzing around. It was a pretty low-key afternoon. And then towards the end of it, just before we left, he came out and wanted me to read him a story before we left. And he had this, he had a hanger, plastic hanger, and he had tied a string to it, and he was pretending that it was something that the cowboys or whatever would ride with, and he was always making things like that.
He was a 5-year-old boy.
Yeah, he was 5 years old, but the urgency that he had in telling me about it, in retrospect, was like he was just trying to cram in all this conversation at once. And then, and I sort of had this, narrowed view where, everything outside of just listening to him, just truly being present to him, was what we did. And then he was, snuggled up next to me on the couch. We read the story, and then we took off to go pick up my daughter and her friend from gymnastics, and we came back, dropped them off, and we came back, and I was getting dinner ready, and he came out of nowhere, really, with his coat on, and said he wanted to go outside and ride his bike. And, it's January 7th, and in Colorado, it had snowed, it was cold,
yeah,
but not uncommon in our town, if the sidewalk is cleared, for kids to be outside riding their bike. Kids that live in Colorado just are used to being outside, and so I was like, well, okay, I'll be right out. I'll come out with you after, let me just put this meatloaf in the oven, that kind of thing. And so I helped him with his coat, and I put his hat on, and, his eyes, he was sort of looking down, and then he kind of looked up at me real pensive and had this very, again, another one of those odd moments. And I kissed him goodbye, and he went out the garage door, and the next thing I know, I heard someone yelling in the street that, they needed help. And I was in the kitchen at the sink, and in retrospect, I was in pretty much the same areas as I was in the dream, in the kitchen.
Oh, wow.
And so when I heard this commotion, and honestly, this was at our neighbor's house next door in the street, and I'm in the back of the house, and I heard someone yelling. So it's, I felt like I had hyper, I don't know what that would be called, hyper sensitivity to hearing this voice from that realm or whatever. And so I immediately knew it had to be something with Kevin. So I ran to the front door, and I could see him from the screen, the screen door that we had. I could see him out in the street and a big truck, and then, I ran across the yard, and he was barely breathing. So, from then on, the nightmare
began. Yeah.
The waking life nightmare begins to spin and spin and spin, and
yeah.
It's an interesting thing to revisit those memories. Sometimes I feel that it's like someone else's story, and then there's other times where I go, whoa, I can still feel that. I'm right there, from right
Yeah.
there. And I have to do some really hard work to
Right.
not
Right.
stay there, But I don't live there anymore.
So I don't know if I ever shared with you. Um, Carla and I worked together for viewers almost a year ago in Parkland. We were called upon to minister to parents at the Parkland shooting and families and such. And so that's where I met Carla. And so, Carla, I don't think I shared with you because we didn't have time there, but I had a dream about my daughter dying 2 years before she died. And,
actually, we did have a short conversation about that, and we were never able to get back to it.
Okay. Yeah. And so for viewers who don't know me, 2 years before our daughter passed, I had a nightmare. And in the nightmare, my daughter was a backseat passenger in a car, and I was in a front seat passenger in that car. And the driver missed a curve in the road and flew into the lake, and our car sank. And the driver and I were able to escape and swim to the surface. And I couldn't find my daughter Allie anywhere. And I dove again and again into the murky water, and I couldn't see anything. I couldn't see the car. I couldn't find Allie. But in that moment of desperation, where is she? Where is she? And I couldn't find her. And where she sank, even though she sank in a car, in the dream, it's a little bit different. And so there was a spot where she sank, and the only thing she left floating behind wasn't a flip-flop or a cell phone or a backpack or a hairbrush like a 15-year-old girl would. It was an open book floating face down on the water where she disappeared. And 2 years later, that dream became a living nightmare when Allie died as a backseat passenger in a car coming home from a swim meet. And so it's very interesting. Your story really intrigued me because it's not all that different from my experience. And I want to, touch on that why is it, do you think, because this moment, losing Kevin was, to say it was pivotal in your life is an understatement.
As it was for you, yeah.
Right, but what you didn't know then is it would also put you on a path to understanding the dream world. And you wanted to find Kevin in your dreams. And so before we go down that and explore that, I want to know, what's your thought on why is it that some of us have these prophetic dreams prior to a traumatic or pivotal event, and other people don't? Is there any thought on that now that you have studied dreams and become certified as a dream work facilitator, and you've got years of experience now working in the dream field? And so has there ever been any exploration of why some of us get a heads up and others don't?
I have always tried to avoid defining that, or having any explanation for it, because I feel like each person's experience is what it is for them. And,
Fair enough.
That, it's just not a cookie cutter thing. There's just not this general or a criteria of, if you have done this, and this, or if you have dreamed this, and this way, that you will most likely have prophetic dreams. It just isn't that way. So,
and dreams are already challenging enough to try to understand for those of us who don't study them. And, every so often we have a dream that was like, what was that about? But for me, I believe that my dream, in my own personal belief, is that I believe my dream was a heads up from God to say, this is going to come to fruition, but there's going to be a purpose. And how, in looking back on your dream, how do you see that prophetic dream for you? Do you think it was a heads up, or?
Well, what actually, after many years of therapy, and which I will, proudly admit to, and on that note, really, I have to say that I had the most wonderful grief therapist when we first started. And I do want to give a heads up to Mary. She's in the book. Without Mary, I would not have been able to put my feet to the ground. You know, she believed in me. She companioned me. She gave me hope and gave me without judgment, all without judgment. And she was willing to go to that place with me because and use my dreams, using my dream journal, you know, as this alternative tool for grief counseling, you know, unlike anything that, you know, had ever been done in her practice before and really what wasn't being done at all much, you know, in the grief or bereavement field. So anyway, back to your question, how I feel about what this prophetic dream was for me, as I said this in the beginning, is that yes, it was a warning, and it was a heads up, but it was not intended for me to save him. There was nothing about the dream that was intended for me to thwart what had happened, to intervene, or to do anything at all to stop it. It was about Kevin being allowed to fulfill his destiny and me being allowed to pursue mine. And so once I realized, Linda, that again, with, you know, a lot of discernment, a lot of prayer, a lot of counseling, that it rocked my whole belief system. I came from a very Catholic, East Coast Italian family. I had been on a spiritual quest for a good 5 or 6 years before this happened, because my mother had actually died from ovarian cancer 3 weeks before Kevin was born. And Kevin was then born with bilateral club feet. And so he had this handicap in the beginning, which was corrected by surgery, but it was something that we continued to have to, you know, therapy and things like that. Mm-hmm. So that, you know, started to rock my foundation of what I really, you know, believed. And how could a God allow this? How could God allow my mother to die of 3 cancers, not, you know, breast cancer, ovarian cancer, colon cancer within, you know, a 4-year span? How could he allow that? How could he allow my son to be born with this handicap when I had done all the right things? When I was, you know, this good little Catholic girl.
Catholic girl, yep.
You know, well, how arrogant of me. Because that doesn't answer the question of, you know, why are children starving in Africa and why are children dying in wars? You know, that I was supposed to be some exception because I was so good, you know, and loved my children and was doing everything that you asked of me, you know. So all of that, you know, rocked the belief system. And so I had to really look at you know, what this was really about. And in terms for me, it would not have been, again, that criteria, you know, of, okay, if you dream this, then you should be able to have this type of dream, or if you do, you know, I had to look at what was like my pattern, what were my associations, what were my themes in my life, and I rolled that back to, you know, the time I was 3 years old when I could recall my dreams.
Well, so let me ask you this. At what point after Kevin died, when you are questioning your faith, questioning the big picture, and questioning God, which, as you and I both know in our work, is very, very common. You know, many bereaved people don't find their faith comfort for a while, and they ask those same questions. Why did my loved one, who was so good, die when there are, people who commit heinous acts of crime against humanity are still alive. That just doesn't make sense. And so, but at what point after Kevin died, when you were wanting answers, did you begin to turn to dreams to help you find these answers? What led you down that path?
Immediately. Okay. But I had already.
Was it because of the prophetic dream that put you there, or was it just the way that you were being directed by the divine and you just didn't realize it to go to dreams?
Yes, and both. Okay. So prior to this, I had been, studying in study groups and in doing dream work before this. And
okay.
And so I had some background, but I had never had anything like this happen before. And so once I took on a different, how do I want to say this?
Like an urgent type of quest?
Well, seeing it from a different perspective and using a different technique of looking at dreams. Okay. I realized that what I had been doing was looking at, the standard interpretations of things, that a car means this, or, it's sort of like the Encyclopedia of Dreams thing.
Right.
And I realized that, oh, wait a minute, that's just a generalization. While there is some truth to that, because there are universal symbols and archetypal symbols, that's what I was recognizing was in this dream and in the nightmare. And that those were the pieces that were making it prophetic and making it more of a divine message for me. So from that, with Mary's help, we really got down into some good study about it, and then I had a wonderful dream mentor. Her name was Diana, and I'd taken a couple of dream workshops from her prior, and she was just wonderful because what she said to me, Linda, when I told her the dream, she said she was so overwhelmed and so overcome with emotion. She said, "Where is God? Where is God in this dream? We must find God in this dream." And that blew me away because all I could see was this negative, evil,
right,
theme, and these very ominous figures, and that's when she helped me realize that the blonde woman was really a messenger. She was a messenger. She was an angel, who had come at God's bidding to give me this message. And it was my ego that interpreted her as being evil.
Okay.
And as being an occult. Because my associations to someone who would try to take my child could not be good.
Right.
Who's gonna, have that?
Who would? Yeah.
Who would? So
only someone sinister. Yeah.
Only someone sinister. The cult group, this cult group.
Yeah.
Well, when I went back, Mary and I did a lot of work with hypnosis on this, and the hypnosis experience enabled me to be able to go back into the dream in a safe and controlled way, to be able to experience it again and see it differently. And that's where I was able to, pull all these things. And then I was like, oh my gosh, this is an agreement.
So at that point, did it become a healing modality?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Very powerful healing modality.
During the counseling sessions, Mary would say to me, okay, what's in your dream journal? Which dream? And I was able to voice through the imagery the excruciating pain and suffering
Mm.
of my interior world. And, and she was able to listen in a non-judgmental way and, mirror it back to me so that we could take the fear away from it and go, oh, wait a second. The blonde woman, she's not this evil woman. She's this messenger. There's all the aspects of it. And so many of my other dreams were like that as well. Yeah. So it became a healing modality, and I was able to then, move on.
Well,
it's not like I understood it overnight. Please,
right.
Everyone out there, don't think for 1 minute that it's something that you understood overnight. I've had insights to that nightmare that I had 28 years ago, as recently as last year.
Really?
Personal things, because our dreams are always, there's multiple layers and meanings to our dreams. Dreams come to us in the service of health and wholeness, always. And they never come to tell us something that we already know. Okay,
so let me ask you this then. When people say, I have a repetitive dream about free falling without a parachute. What does that mean? Is it the same? Is it symbolic in the same way for every person? Or does it mean something different for each person based upon their own filters and their experiences and their belief system?
Yes, and both. Yes, and both. Yeah.
I'm going to dump that answer.
That's the beauty of dream work, that there's these multiple layers and meanings. And so as you're asking me, okay, so let's just say that your dream was that, okay, I dreamt that I was, falling off a mountain. Took a step and fell off a mountain or whatever, and however it is that you describe that. Well, I can never sit in your dream theater and experience or see your dream the way you saw it. I can only see it in my imagined version of your dream. So the way I see myself, or the way I perhaps see you falling off this mountain, is really the way I might see myself. So there's these layers there of giving.
So then you've gone on now to become an expert in this. And so how do you...
I would not say expert, no. I would not.
Well, I think many of us would call you an expert.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
So, well, you've certainly studied it now for the past 28 years plus. But for people who are grieving loss of a loved one, how do you use this now to help them heal? You have taken this and done some phenomenal work with it. But it's interesting because prior to meeting you, I had never heard of using dreams as a healing modality, especially for grievers. And yet, on your quest to search for Kevin in your dreams and find answers to what all this means, you have taken that knowledge and your experience, your applied experience, to do just that, help people heal. Yeah. And so how do these dreams help them? How do you, when they come to you and they're missing someone they love, where do you begin?
Well, usually what happens is that whether I'm doing workshops or I'm, meeting people or, or they come to me, oh, I had a dream or whatever. Many, many times it's either one or the other. It's either a dream where they are reliving the death of their loved one, or they are having, extreme dreams of pain and suffering and
trauma,
sort of reenacting the death again in many different ways, not even the same way as the person died or the child died. you know.
Okay.
And then the other type of dream that, you know, people generally come to me about is, well, I had a dream about my son or my daughter, and it was real. It was real. I saw them. You know, the after-death communication dream, the dream visit is what I call it, the dream visit. And so usually that's the dream that people want to focus on, is the dream visit.
Right. Well, because it feels good. When we dream of our loved one, our deceased loved one, it feels really good. But it always comes, for me, it always comes with a catch-22 when I wake up. Because when I wake up, it's like a kick in the gut all over again. And I've dreamt of my daughter multiple times. And in almost every dream, she's sitting by my side, yet I'm the only one who can see and talk with her. She's invisible to everybody else.
Yeah.
And in many of the dreams, she reminds me that this is how it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be this way. And because, you know, for the larger picture, our soul agreement, or just because
spiritual agreement.
The universe needs, you know, people to suffer so that they can then turn pain into purpose and help others who might not help out. You know, there's always just kind of this broader message that she gives to me. But what's really interesting about it is that my husband has only dreamed of her once. And Carla, this is a really interesting, you may or may not have heard this before, but I'm just going to share it, is that he had said to me that, why don't I dream of her?
Yeah.
Why do you dream of her all the time? And yet I don't dream of her. And I remember intuitively thinking that his grief was in this frozen place, that he somehow, his grief was preventing him from dreaming about her. Now, I don't know whether that's right or wrong, but that's intuitively what felt right. Well, then he suffered this massive stroke because he was grieving in silence. And, you know, he wasn't processing and yada, yada, yada. Anyway, the one night that he did dream of Ellie.
The body rebelled.
What's that?
The body rebelled.
Well, and so what happened was, I remember dreaming that I was moaning, and it was a guttural moan that came from deep down inside my soul. And I was moaning so much, I woke myself up, and I wondered if I had woken Jamie up, and he was sleeping, at least I thought. And in the morning, I told him I had a really bizarre dream where I was moaning, and he said, honey, that was real. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, I looked over at you, and when I did, Allie's face was transposed on yours.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I guess that's not a dream of his, but so I don't know how to explain that
waking,
one.
I mean, I would call that a waking dream. You know, I would call that a waking dream. I would call that something, you know, visionary.
Well, so how do you explain to people the difference between a grief dream and a dream visit?
Well, that's where it gets really dicey. Because on the one hand, if you want to believe that that's, and if you know in your gut, and you know intuitively, oh, that was our connection, and it was real, and we really did have a visit, and we really did have a face-to-face, and you were there, then I don't see the purpose of going any further than that. However, if you're willing to, again, recognize that all dreams come to us in the service of health and wholeness, and that all dreams have multiple meanings and layers, that you can even unpack the dream visit and find out that there are grief issues there that are calling out to be resolved or reconciled. So for me, a lot of times I would have, you know, these dreams about Kevin, and I would realize that, you know, there's just something that's off about it. He's there, and it seems like it's him, and he's 5 years old, and, you know, and then there's just something that's odd about it. Or is it something that he does that's uncharacteristic? And so I came to realize that I had to, in journaling my dreams, I had to find out what my personal symbols were, and
Okay.
and
And
start
how do you
logging those. Well,
how,
by journaling, consistently, so that
okay.
when you start looking at the dreams and you start finding a pattern and you start seeing themes in these dreams, and then you go, okay, well, you know what? That red car showed up 3 dreams ago.
Okay.
Wonder why. What association do I have to that red car? Okay, well, I had a red car when I was in high school. Why am I dreaming about that red car now and in a present day situation? Well, there's something about that red car and the time period when I was in high school that is signaling to me that there's something that's going on in my waking life that is similar to something that I experienced perhaps at that time.
Okay.
Maybe not the same, but there's something that's drawing attention to those 2 periods of time that I need to look at. So then you go back and you go, okay, well, what was happening at the time that I had this red car? Blah, blah, blah. You see, and so then you start logging that. It takes a little bit of work, for sure, and it takes some commitment and discernment.
Do you recommend keeping a spiral notebook or journal and a pen next to your bed? And so do you write down the dream as soon as you wake up from it, or wait till morning time?
If you can, I think that that's the best way to do it when you wake up, because it's fresh. And even if all you can remember is a couple of words, I've gotten so skilled at it that I can have my book next to my bed with the pen already out, and I can be laying there with my eyes closed and chicken scratch, and I can write in the dark.
That's impressive.
And then I'll wake up in the morning and it looks like chicken scratch. But
Yeah.
it's something legible. There's something that I can read that triggers the dream, and then I'll remember it. Now, if I have time, do I have to jump out of bed and get to my day? Do I have to, whatever. But if I can at that moment continue to jot down words or phrases of things or images that I remember, that's a start.
Okay.
If you have time to actually, log a whole dream at that time, that's the best way to do it, of course.
And so
a lot of times I'll wake up and I've got those fleeting images, and it isn't until I get in the shower that the whole thing comes flooding back to me.
Oh, okay.
I'm without a pen and a paper in the shower, But
well, just so you know, for viewers who don't know, they sell on Amazon and probably in many stores a pen that lights up in the dark.
Yes.
My husband actually got me one for Christmas a few years ago, because I would be, trying to go to sleep, and then, I need to do that tomorrow. And instead of getting up, going into the bathroom where I kept a pen and paper, right down there, he got me this pen that when you put the to paper, it lights up.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. And so for viewers who are interested in journaling their dreams, you don't have to get out of bed. You can just, keep it on your nightstand right within reach, and jot down, just as Carla has said, whatever comes to mind, enough that, on the next day when you can look back on it, it'll trigger and it'll come back to you.
Yeah.
So, but I just wanted to throw that in there, because a lot of people think, get up and turn on the lamp and all that. And you really don't have to. But I see some activity here and I want to mention a couple. Oh, Dave Roberts. Dave is there. Hello, Dave. He says, hi, Carla.
My sweetheart.
And Sherry is here too. Tracy.
I love Sherry. Hi.
Tracy on Bradshaw says, my dreams have come after the loss of my son. In dream visits, they often bring understanding about my grief. So Tracy, thank you for sharing that. I think it's very powerful that they help you understand your grief, because, grief, especially in those early years, we're still trying to wrap our brain around it. especially if it's an unexpected loss or a traumatic loss. And, I don't know about you, Carla, but for me, after we lost our daughter, I don't remember much from the first 2.5 years. I was in shock that long. And I've come to find out that most people are. We just don't really talk about it, that we're on autopilot. So Tracy, thank you for sharing that. I think that that's really important, and that people understand just what Carla is teaching is that dreams can be a very powerful healing modality. And so what, in your line of work, Carla, is there one type of dream that bereaved people commonly